Thank you for joining us today. We are joined by the Priestess of Darkness, Vikki Notcem. Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me here. I'm very excited.
Can I just say, that is such a cool name, the Priestess of Darkness. That's badass.
Thank you. I try to have a little mystique around myself, and I feel like Priestess is a very fitting title for myself. I preach the dark words, if you will.
You preach the dark words. That's I think that's what drew us to you. That you've definitely got something mysterious about you. So we've got to bring you on, find out a little bit more, and find out how much of it is the real you. So
I love it. It is a great name. It's one of the best ones I've heard, the Priestess of Darkness. So let's start at the beginning. Before we talk the Priestess of Darkness, obviously Norway. What was the wrestling scene like growing up? I mean, was it just mainly WWE, or was the wrestling in Norway as well?
Well, I mean, I first discovered wrestling when I was around, 13 or 14, something like that, and there was just like one channel that showed it, and it was Eurosport, and they only showed it at Mondays in the evening, and they would show like old matches from mostly WWE and like ECW, WCW, that sort of thing, and they would go like a range of different like time periods. They would have a lot of Attitude Era, but they would have like some not that many years ago, just anything that wasn't very recent. And they would also have like last week's Raw. Right. So that was like my first introduction with wrestling. I randomly was flipping around channels on the TV a Monday evening, and it was some sort of Rumble, and that was the most amazing thing I had ever seen. So I just stayed up and watched as long as I could, and would do that every Monday afterwards.
Did you fall in love with it straight away? Like, as soon as you saw it, you just thought, wow, I need to do this?
Oh, definitely. It was just, I've never seen anything like that before. And, you do kind of hear through like popular media, American shows or movies about wrestling, but, none of that ever shows you what it's really like. And so seeing just a bunch of like jacked men with like long hair and cool tattoos and gear and all of that, just seeing them going at each other and fighting and just being the most power fantasy you could imagine. It really fascinated me, and I was just immediately sucked into the whole thing.
Who sucked you in then? I mean, who was the person you saw that you thought, yes, that's my favorite. That's who's bringing me into this.
Oh, definitely The Undertaker. Not a big surprise there. Because I mean, I was already like an edgy kid on the inside. I hadn't started expressing that on the outside yet, but I was very much drawn to the more occult, mythical, the dark, and I guess villainy-like stuff already. So when I saw The Undertaker for the first time, there was just this mystique and aura around him that I was fascinated by, and he became an instant favorite. Like I just knew when I first saw him that I love this guy. This is the guy I have to watch everything from.
So is he still one of your favorites to this day then? Because I feel like he definitely has to have inspired your current character in wrestling.
I do hold a tremendous respect for The Undertaker. Obviously, the later years of his career right now haven't always been the best. I did enjoy like his, I guess, finish with the Boneyard match. That was surprisingly positive to see. But I feel like it's on one hand, I do have like a lot of other wrestlers that I do like to watch that are more current, but I will always say that he's my favorite, even if like his recent years haven't been the best. Then it's just the whole legacy behind him and all the years he's had and all the different phases he's been in.
It's still The Undertaker.
It's near and dear to me still.
Yeah, you and me both. He's always been my favorite as well. I remember I mean, I'm old enough. I watched his debut in 1990. I remember Survivor Series, and ever since then, I mean, I was 6 years old then, and I was terrified when he came out. But I've always stuck with him. 30 years later, and I'm still an Undertaker guy. But who are some of the current guys then? I mean, I get the feeling that you might be like an Aleister Black fan.
I am, definitely. And I've since then, back then I obviously just used to watch WWE because that's kind of all that I knew. And you do kind of stick with the more safe stuff. But these days, since I started wrestling myself, I've been focused more on, indie wrestling and the different people there. And some of my current favorites are, among others, Abaddon, who now wrestles in AEW, and Max the Impaler.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Before we talk about your training as well, obviously, I know you mentioned that you like the occult and all that kind of stuff. I mean, me and Callum are big fans of like the occult stuff. We love watching, anything documentary-wise with, UFOs, aliens, cryptids. You name it. Cryptids. I mean, what got you into that kind of thing as well? I mean, what's your kind of favorite, shall we say? Because I'm a big Bigfoot fan. I love anything with Bigfoot. So I mean, what is it with you? What got you into that?
I guess it's kind of hard to say what exactly got me into it, but I guess fantasy is kind of a gateway drug into the more bizarre and weird.
Sure.
I used to watch and read Lord of the Rings when I was younger. Still try to have like a marathon every 2 or 3 years with 7 meals and inspired by the Tolkien universe and all of that. But I've always just been a really big fan of fantasy games. Mostly strategy, but I do have a thing for playing mostly necromancers and liches and that sort of thing. I guess it's the aesthetic mostly in that kind of drew me in. And since then, when I've grown up and had more, contact with the internet and being able to experience more and discover more things, then I'm actually kind of a both a murder mystery fan, like true crimes, but also the unexplainable events like the Diatlo Pass, for example, those sort of things that are like unsolvable cases that you have different kinds of theories on what really happened, and there could be like a really weird and maybe extraterrestrial or magical solution to it. I really like something that seems too weird to be true.
Yeah, I think that's the appeal, isn't it? Like, I'm a big skeptic and I don't really believe in anything, but I love the idea, the small % chance that it might just be something a bit weird or supernatural or paranormal. Like, I don't believe in ghosts and stuff, but I'd love to see a ghost. And, the same with Bigfoot. I don't believe Bigfoot. Jamie does. He loves Bigfoot. But I'd love to see one.
Bigfoot's real.
So, yeah, it's just the weirdness of it, isn't it? That's what draws you in.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because, I mean, I would call myself a skeptic as well. I'm not the most superstitious when it comes to things, but I do find myself fascinated with events and things that are a bit weird to have just a natural explanation to.
Yeah, exactly. It's fascinating stuff. And Callum thinks I believe everything. I don't.
He believes everything. Any conspiracy theory, any kind of Bigfoot or Loch Ness monster, anything, he believes in it. Everything.
Oh, Bigfoot's real. Bigfoot's real.
He's the opposite of a skeptic.
So, obviously, you saw wrestling in Norway. I mean, how did you get into training there? I mean, is there many Norwegian training schools?
I mean, there's actually just one, kind of, because when I watched wrestling on Eurosport, there was the founder of Norwegian wrestling, Eric Isaacson. He was actually commentating, and he would, from time to time, kind of advertise with, and if you people at home are interested in seeing some real-life wrestling, then we have a show here and there and this and then. But the problem was that at that point there were mostly 18 plus shows, and I was like 13, 14, and I kind of I tried to forget that Norwegian wrestling happened, because knowing that there was this whole world that I so desperately wanted to be part of, but I couldn't because I was way too young, I just tried to ignore it. It was the same every time, like a metal band I really liked came to Norway and they played at 18 plus venues. I just tried to ignore it and forget about it, because then I wouldn't get all sad knowing of all the fun that I missed. But when I was like 19 or 20 or something like that, I got a job at an after-school program, and one of my coworkers turned out to actually be a wrestler. Her name is Natasha. She's not active anymore, unfortunately, but I don't know how it even came up that we both like wrestling. But obviously one of her favorites was The Undertaker as well, so we started talking a lot and we really bonded. And she convinced me that we do wrestling here in Norway. You should totally come and try out for it. And so I did. And luckily I was accepted in.
That's awesome. So it was just by random chance you found another wrestling fan, and you both liked The Undertaker, and you ended up wrestling training after that. I mean,
yeah, I don't
that's
know
pretty
what
awesome.
would happened if I didn't get that job, or she didn't get that job. I mean,
it was meant to be.
It was meant to be, yeah. I don't know if I would have found it out any other way, honestly, because a lot of, I hang out with like mostly either like very metalheads or very nerdy people, and there aren't like a lot of the wrestlers are in those environments, unfortunately. I mean, a lot of the older guys are huge nerds because they started out LARPing and was a fan of that, and then they got into wrestling. But they're not in the same environments as me, obviously, because of the age difference. So I don't really think they're. I think it would take a while before I would discover wrestling in that sense.
It's funny, that, isn't it? Because LARPing and wrestling are very similar, really.
It is. Actually, the Norwegian Wrestling Federation, we're sort of an ideal organization. So everyone does is volunteer, and we get our money from like actually like a national youth organization. And that organization is actually mostly a nerd-related organization that have local LARPs and what do you call it? Data party, computer parties, LAN.
LAN parties.
Yeah, LAN parties.
Yeah.
Or like board games. But they found out that, you know what? I think we can call wrestling. We can argue that wrestling fits into those categories because it's basically LARPing.
Yeah.
So obviously the training as well. I mean, how did you take to the training? Did you find it easy, or I mean, was it tough?
Yeah, it was very tough. My only physical experience before that was handball, and that's not comparable to wrestling at all. So it was a whole new way to train and a whole new way to learn your body. And even though I used to be a keeper, this was much more hurtful than I was used to. So I do remember that I managed to damage my knee a little bit in the beginning. And I would always come home after training like incredibly sore, lots of bruises, because I bruise very easily. And at that point, I was so scared that what if this is my new reality? What if I'm just going to get super injured all the time? I'm scared. I don't want to destroy my body. But, when you learn more and train more, then you don't get injured as much, and you learn to take stuff better, and you learn the reality of everything. So it did take me a little bit of time to get into all of it properly. But I feel like obviously I have to be better now. I mean, it's been like 3 years, but I feel more comfortable and it comes more naturally to me now.
You also manage as well, don't you? You manage wrestlers too.
Yes.
What was it that started the managing side of things? Because obviously you loved wrestling, but was managing something you were always interested in too?
Actually, not really, because it hadn't really crossed my mind that much. But at one of the first shows that I was able to, like, be a part of setting up the ring and preparing everything and be at the location and have a little bit of ring training and all of that. There was this one guy, Ruslan, who after I had gotten in my regular getup, I had like a very, no, I'm not going to say graphic, but a very occult dress with Baphomets on it and all of that. And I had dark makeup, and he just saw that. I was like, oh my God, you look amazing. You have to be my manager. And he might have said that in a joking manner, but that kind of became an idea that imprinted itself in my head, that I was like, I could be that. I could be a manager, actually. And he's called the Norwegian Nightmare, and that fitted the aesthetic that I always wanted to go for. So I felt like this is perfect. This is a match made in heaven.
Yeah, I've seen the pictures when we were doing research, and I mean, you look like you're a great pair together as a manager and a wrestler. You definitely complement each other's styles. Have you found it to be challenging being a manager? Because obviously, being a wrestler, you have to get the crowd to react a certain way. As a manager, do you find it easier or harder to get the crowd to react?
I found it a little bit harder, but mostly in the sense that there's not that much of that a lot of managers in the Norwegian scene,
right.
So I didn't really have a lot to, I guess, learn from in that sense and see in action for myself on how we did it.
Yeah.
So it felt in the start a little bit unnatural for me, and I didn't really know how to act properly or how much I should act. But I am a very anxious person, unfortunately. So on that side, the managing job was kind of ideal, because my first appearance was actually, I just showed up out of nowhere, this mysterious woman with a hood covering her face, a dark black old book in her hands, and like incredibly long nails, just came into the ring after Ruslan was finished with the match. And you saw me whisper something to him, and I pointed at his opponents, and he just destroyed him even more. And, so I just instantly became this mysterious and unknown kind of person, because you didn't really know who I was. I didn't really say a lot. I was kind of working behind the scenes and pulling the strings of Ruslan.
Sometimes you don't have to say much or do much. It's the little things you do, the little details. And like you said, you just came up and whispered into his ear. You made it clear, like, you're the one who's telling him what to do. He answers to you, which makes people interested. Have you found, like, doing the managing stuff to be as rewarding as wrestling, or are you always a wrestler first?
I would say I'm a wrestler first, because it is very fun to have the managing job and the role of that. But, in my heart, I just want to be a part of the violence as much as possible. And it's not the easiest thing to do that when you're on the sidelines. I do get my little moments here and there, of course, and I'm very grateful for those. But I noticed that I wanted to be in on the action way more.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts in general? Obviously, the Scandinavian scene last year, seems to be making a bit of a name for itself. There's some rumblings. Obviously, you got Body Slam in Denmark. We spoke to Ali Sink from Sweden last week. Yourself with Norway. What do you think the future looks like for the Scandinavian wrestling scene? We think it's going to have a big boom very soon.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the same. Because we have had a slow couple of years, honestly, but I feel like it's something that's kind of being picked up more and more. And there's also, I'm not sure what to call it, but we do kind of get this, at least social media presence that's a bit more new and interesting. And there's really nothing to compare this with in Norway, because there are actually a lot of martial arts that are forbidden to do like professionally and have like professional tournaments here in Norway, because of how in some sports like hitting people on the head can assure you a win, and Norway is very much like, no, we don't want to make people think that they should hit each other on the heads and they injure each other. We don't want that. So there's not really anything like this if you want to see it in Norway. We don't have a lot of boxing matches. We don't have a lot of shows like that. So it's something that's, being picked up all around in Scandinavia in general. And we do take influence from each other on what the trends are and what we're interested in. So I feel like I'm very positive to our development further.
Yeah, and also, I mean, the Norwegian Wrestling Federation as well. I mean, what's it like being working there?
I mean, compared to other things, or I don't really know what to say there.
You're having fun there.
Well, yeah, definitely. The thing is that there are not really that many wrestlers, like active wrestlers in Norway, so we do kind of become like a very tight bunch, and we see most of each other at each practice, and exchange information and tips and talk about matches we've seen recently. And it's I really like everyone a whole lot. They've all been incredibly kind and just very good people. I really enjoy like the environment they've created and the people that are there. Because since things are a little bit smaller, it makes it, I don't know why, but it makes things more friendlier, because people see each other as, more than just a random guy you work with, but you become a family of sorts. And since nobody really gets paid to do this, we all do it out of the passion in our hearts. And that's very important, that we all share the same passion.
Yeah, definitely, especially for a scene which is emerging right now, quite a new scene. I think it's important that everybody shares that same passion to help it grow. So hopefully, we've, like you said, in a few years' time, hopefully the Scandinavian scene is just like the British wrestling scene. Because it always came out of nowhere. We always say we never used to have a wrestling scene, and then it started very much like your wrestling scene, quite quietly, and now we've got quite a good wrestling scene. But speaking of British wrestling, I mean, I've got to ask, are you looking to come over to the UK at some point when you can travel?
Oh, I would love to. One of the dreams that I have as a wrestler is to get booked in other countries and be able to both wrestle, but I also would like to honestly just travel and be in the audience for other countries' wrestling shows, because, from what you both see on matches online and what I hear from my fellow Norwegian wrestlers who have been to a lot of countries and wrestled there, each country is a little bit unique in how they do things and the people they have. And, I do want to experience that more. And I don't want to, the thing is, I really like myself in a safe bubble. So I like to, like traveling to America or Japan to wrestle, it seems a little bit scary to me. So I would rather travel to the countries that are near me. And if I could travel to England and be in a show there, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I know you said about not traveling, but I'm going to say it now. Before we do start to wrap this up as well, I would love to see you, get into America, get into AEW.
That would be cool.
I want to see you in Abaddon. That's a dream match.
Oh God, that's like a dream match made in hell.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Like, absolutely, made in hell. I love it. That's now a dream match for me that I didn't know I wanted until we got you on here. So now I've got a dream match. That's what I want to see. Before we let you go, thank you so much for coming on. We genuinely appreciate your time, and we do want you back on. We'd love to get you back on.
I would love to be here again. This has been so incredibly nice, and again, I'm so honored that you would want little old me here and talk to me.
You don't give yourself enough credit. You
hours. But before we go, let people know where they can find you. Obviously, social media.
Yeah, you can find me at Vikki Notcem on both Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, because no one else has this name, so I'm lucky enough to have it on all platforms.
So you've got your Vikki Notcem on all platforms.
Yes.
That never happens. That's really good.
I am very lucky. So yeah, if you like Scandinavian history memes, you should follow me on Twitter.
I did see some that you posted. I saw some, and I was like, I understood some of them, and I laughed. But then some of them, I was like, I think you have to be Scandinavian to understand that one. But they were still funny.
Hey, you're the only one. You are the only Vikki Notcem. So we're all
the one and only.
The one and only. That is it. And we appreciate you and your time so much, and we cannot wait to get you back on. But
I feel the same.
Oh, you're making us blush. But for now, the one and only, the Princess